Today, Underdog released new details about Ball Mania 4, which is going to open even sooner than we expected. The NFL draft rumor mill is still churning. We're going to talk through it all, as well as another 16 offseason team recaps. I'm Alex Irwin, and you're watching another episode of The Climb. EJ, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here, as always.
Have you recovered from our marathon 2.5-hour stream yesterday?
Yeah, honestly, I got a lot of sleep, even through the baby and everything, to make sure my body is ready as it can be for today.
Yeah.
Ready for another 2.5, of course.
Yeah, so before we dive into some of the off-season recaps, as I mentioned at the top, Underdog has released more details about Ball Mania 4. So I'll actually go full screen with that here. This is the prize pool breakdown. We've got, it's kind of split, and it's caused a lot of discussion in the community today, but we've got 10 million in playoff prizes, 5 million for the regular season. So kind of a 66-33 split there. You see on the regular season prizes, it goes to the top 10,000, which sounds like a lot, but in reality, that's only the top 1.5% of regular season scorers. And then, that has a pretty big impact on how much money can go to the playoff teams. So the overall advancement structure hasn't changed too much. The contest is going to be almost 200,000 entries larger than it was for Ball Mania 3. But the final round is actually going to be smaller. And that's because, as I highlighted here, the second round is tougher to get out of with Ball Mania 4. You got to be first out of 16 instead of first out of 10. And overall, I don't have any issues with the changes to the playoff structure. I think having groups of 16 is fine. I was worried that it was going to be something tougher, like 1 out of 20 or something larger than that. But I think sort of my key concern this year is, I've got on the bottom there, if you were to max enter, which is 150 entries, in Ball Mania 3, your odds of reaching the final would have been, a little over 15%. In Ball Mania 4, that's down below 10%. And the reason that's a problem is because the payouts between the finals in Ball Mania 4 and Ball Mania 3 have really not changed aside from first place. So Ball Mania 4, first place gets 3 million, but then if you look at third place, 300,000, not only is that a really steep drop off from first, but that's actually less than what third place would have gotten in Ball Mania 3. So you have lower odds of reaching the finals and lower odds of getting a good payout when you are in the finals. So that's just something that I'm a little concerned about with the contest structure this year. And as far as like how the strategy changes with the regular season prize, I do think there's going to be some people who target guys who are going to play all 16 games, a little bit less heavy on the rookies or suspended players or injured players. But I think for me, it doesn't really change all that much because you're still trying to be top 1.5% in the regular season. You're still gonna have to swing for the fences in terms of upside. I would have rather seen that $5 million spread out across the playoff payouts, but I know there's some people who feel differently, but that's just me. The one other thing I had that I was going to talk about is with the contest opening, it opens this Saturday night, basically as soon as the draft ends. We're still 2 weeks away from the NFL schedule being released, which means we don't know who the playoff matchups are. And this is some research from Establish the Run, basically just showing that if you have game stacks, the expected value of your lineup is higher. So that's kind of giving me some pause from drafting too many lineups in the early stage of the contest. Like, I know there's going to be a lot of ADP value potentially the first day or two when the contest opens before things settle. But beyond that, I think I'm going to want to wait until the schedule gets released. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on the structure here, but those are kind of my initial takeaways.
Yeah, I'll say for the most part, I pretty much agree exactly with what you're saying. It's kind of like hurtful in a sense to be like, yeah, I mean, just being in what your situation would have been last year, being first to second and being $2 million, I mean, barring that's legitimate life changing money no matter what. But to have 3 times life changing money it really just shows that, I don't know, it's just a major drop off from 1 to 2. And then, like you said, from 2 to 3, it's even worse. So it's like, I don't know. I would have agreed in the extent to the extent of having it spread across just bigger numbers, makes it more appealing, would make me want to throw in more entries, especially with it being a $25 entry fee versus, throwing in a bunch of puppies where you can get 5 different teams for 25, which is probably like realistically where I will put more money in this year. It's just tough to, swing for the fences and hope for the best or kind of just play consistency. I always like the odds of throwing more teams in and hoping that one of them hits it big versus, putting in something like this, but especially with the payout structure.
Yeah, and that's how I am too. I just from like a pure fun perspective, like I want to draft as many teams as I can. Yeah. So doing some of the $5 contests makes a little bit more sense for me. But I mean, I know there was people last year, and I don't remember exactly where they finished, but there was somebody who only entered one lineup in Best Ball Mania 3 and ended up finishing top 10. So it can happen, but I think I personally would just rather have more emphasis on making the finals. Like even if you had the lower spots in the finals getting a higher payout, I think that's where I'd want to be.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm always about, trying to maximize your opportunities. So even just when that comes to DFS, if you feel good about a player, invest in them, but don't go too far over, like if you're throwing in multiple lineups in the same day. And same thing with this, especially with that being a higher, it's all about how much you want to invest into it. If you're throwing in 1,000 and you're kind of spreading this across, a timeline of every few months, that's one thing. But, if you're kind of sitting on more on my end where you're going to not put in 1,000 on one single thing, you're just going to kind of do it like a $5 one as one ends and just start another one so you can actually keep track of what's going on for a change. That was my big mistake last year, which is also something I highly, highly recommend. At least don't do any more than like 2 or 3 at a time. But that's a side note for just a kind of tad bit of hopefully that'll help you out if you're just getting started. Don't get into it where you're doing 8 drafts at once and you have no idea who's on what team, and it's not worth that. But yeah, just with the entry fee being higher, like I said, I wish the payout would be a little more spread across the board.
Yeah, it just, now more than ever, it feels like you're playing the lottery, which is fine, but it's so tough to tell yourself the story of like having a feasible shot at those huge payouts at the top.
And it says calculated as you can get with the lottery for the most part. Everything's just as variable as something like that because people get hurt, they have down weeks, everything happens so much that you can pick somebody like Joe Burrow who could and Jamar Chase, you could have that stack maybe. I don't know where the ADP is landing right now, but you could have that stack and that could be an 80-point stack right there, or that could end up being, 20 because one of them's hurt.
Yeah.
So, there's just so many variables that go into it, and literally one major injury like that can cost your entire team.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be fun to do a few, but man, if you do get a team near the top in the finals, that sweat is going to be insane.
Yeah,
swinging between 3 million versus 300,000 there at the top.
Oh yeah,
which obviously either one just feels insane. But
and don't get me wrong, I think we're both going to have our fair share of entries in this particular contest, but it's just a matter of how many we're truly going to do.
Yeah,
that's how I feel about it.
All right. Well, in hopes of keeping this not quite as long as last night, dive right into the NFC East here, and as you can see, EJ he decked out in Eagles gear,
Yes.
so I will let you take the floor here and give us
So
your NFC thoughts.
We'll start with the Eagles because it's the easy one for me to bank on. I love Jalen Hurts and anything super flex. I think he's the 101. I legitimately think that he would have been the number one quarterback in fantasy last year if he wouldn't have had the shoulder injury. By far, like, that's my personal opinion right now. With fandom involved, fandom not involved, I think he has the highest ceiling and the most consistent floor. As the floor being relatively high, you're stepping up a couple stairs in that ceiling, or in that floor, excuse me. With that being said, the defense is going to be worse this year as a whole. We lost quite a bit of people that would attribute to our success. So I think that the Eagles are going to have closer games this year, which means that they're going to have to throw the ball more. The second half, I don't know the exact statistics on it, but just from eyeballing all the games, the amount of games where they did nothing in the second half was incredible. So I think they're actually going to have to do stuff in the second half. And with how good all, the main pieces of this offense were, with those points alone in the first half, if they can attribute any of that to the second half scoring, then they're going to, pop off. I love both the receivers in this. I even like Devontae just as much as AJ Brown. I know their ADP really isn't that different right now, which it shouldn't be. It really, really shouldn't be. It's a 1A, 1B kind of thing. AJ Brown's just your big play guy, and he's just bigger bodied. Dallas Goedert even, it'll be kind of interesting to see if Devontae Smith's production goes down with Goedert coming back and being healthy or not. But, that's a whole who knows kind of thing until it happens. There's the hope of a rookie running back in particular for me coming there. But otherwise, I'm not really huge on the running back room. I think it's going to be pretty split across the board on who's in there. The only bet I'll ever make for sure is Boston Scott touchdown against the Giants. But
yeah,
otherwise, I'm kind of holding off on anything running back with the Eagles.
So before I give you my thoughts on the Eagles, first off, I agree with everything that you said. No issues there. I'm just curious from a fan perspective, like, what is your ideal outcome of this draft? They got the draft pick at 10 and then 30.
Realistically, it'd be best if someone like Jalen Carter did slide down the board and we got him, because for a while he's regarded as the number one prospect in the draft. And, with the off the field stuff kind of happening, that, let that capital go down in his eyes. But I read something somewhere about Jordan Davis being one of the guys at Georgia that was able to help keep him intact, keep him, keep him just straight, not doing anything crazy, acting a fool. So that's probably the best actual scenario. And then landing Branch at 30, if he would slide down, hopefully. We've needed a good safety for a while now, and Blankenship did decent last year, but I think that I don't think it's going to be anything offensive in the first round for us. Don't really need it, truthfully. Everything else is just borderline solid.
Yeah, they just strike me as an organization who is too sharp to take a running back in the top 10. Like, I think they know the value that just isn't there.
Right. And I said this yesterday. You got people floating around. You got Kareem Hunt. You said Fournette, Zeke, all these people that are pretty good running backs mixing potentially here soon, just floating around, being potential add-ons that you could get for 3-4 mil on a 1-year contract just so that they're playing, so they can hopefully prove it to somebody and get a contract somewhere else.
Yeah. The tidbits that I found on the Eagles is they had 32 rushing touchdowns last year as a team. The next closest was the Cowboys with 24. And I think you can look at that a couple different ways, and no matter how you slice it, you can turn it into a positive.
Definitely.
Like, Hurts had 13 rushing touchdowns last year. Miles Sanders had 11. So like even if Hurts comes down in the rushing touchdown department, you can look at that as upside for the receivers versus what
Definitely.
they were, or more for Rashad Penny. Like he's interesting to me. He was at 5.9 yards per carry, which isn't a perfect measure of running back efficiency, but that would have been first among running backs.
Yeah.
It is a smaller sample because he got hurt, but I mean he's really efficient. Last time I saw his ADP, it was like 8th, 9th round. And that's right around the part in drafts where wide receiver hits a pretty big cliff as well. So he's a running back who I would be okay taking stabs on purely for the rushing upside. Like I know there's the injury risk, but I'm happy taking him, assuming he stays as a round 8-9 pick.
Honestly, and I completely agree with that. Just for the fact that when he's been on the field and healthy, he's been monstrous. You know, I just remember going back and looking at all those Seattle games where he's putting up 20 points a game, and it just seems like when he plays and he stays healthy, he's everything that he was drafted to be. It's just a matter of staying on the field.
Yeah. You know? And those are the kinds of guys I want to bet on for best ball because you know they can go win you a week if they're on the field.
All right, let's. So that's my quick. You got anything else on the Eagles you want to add?
No, nothing significant. I'll just say for the wide receivers, AJ Brown's going wide receiver 6. Devonta Smith is going wide receiver 13, and I think they're both great picks.
Yeah, if I had the choice, I would probably wait on Smith at that point just to get another elite talent at that spot in the draft because I really don't think their end result this year will be too far off. I'm a firm believer in that right now. As of right now, we'll see if that changes.
Yeah.
We'll go to the Cowboys just to get them out the way because nobody likes the Cowboys. Really, Tony Pollard is the guy who stands out a whole lot in my eyes. And then the receiving room is kind of like one of those things again where it seems like there's definitely going to be one other guy besides the main guy who does well, but who's it going to be?
Yeah.
They could draft somebody potentially even still. It's not the craziest thing that Cowboys have ever done. They drafted CD when that didn't seem like it was a reasonable pick. I remember being angry about that. Brandon Cooks could be a super solid, just kind of PPR guy for the team, and he could be putting up 10 to 15 a week. And if the Cowboys are gonna slow down though and run the ball a lot more, who knows? Which, like I said, Tony Pollard has a lot of upside, and however it goes with the draft, Bijan has been talked about somehow getting to Dallas at times too. I don't think he'll make it that point in the draft, but the backups for the Cowboys would be an excellent, late round flyer too. I don't have any interest in tight ends though.
Yeah, I think I've seen them mocked a lot to Dalton Kincaid late in the first. I think they are one of the more interesting spots for a rookie tight end for me, just because I think it probably would be the third option in the passing game. Michael Gallup, I mean, he is going to be 2 years removed now from the ACL, so maybe he gets better, but he was not impressive last year. I can't even remember the name. I was racking my brain while you were talking, but their 3rd round pick last year at wide receiver, he got steamed up into the 130s, but he did not look good at all, so I'm not interested in him this year.
I know who you're talking about, and it's blanking me because he didn't do anything.
No.
I don't say it wasn't Turpin. Turpin came from the USFL.
Jalen Tolbert. Okay. That's who it was.
Yes, Tolbert. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he did not flash last year. I think my biggest concern with the Cowboys is the switch to, is it Schottenheimer, the OC now?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm just scared they're going to go extremely run heavy, and that's going to be bad for Dak and CD. And I was heavy on Dak and CD last year, but
I really don't think Dak's going to be as good either. Just after his ankle injury, he lost that rushing upside quite a bit. I mean, he still will run the ball more than some people, but I mean, it's not there. It really, I don't know. I don't have much interest in it. It's going to be kind of like watching the Battlehawks, for example, with their RPOs. It's not going to be much of a or any of their option plays, not RPOs, any of their option plays, it's pretty much going to be a handoff 99% of the time, it seems like. So I don't see much of that going. And, I think CD still has big game potential. He's a hard guy for me to draft just because he seems like he could be so up and down this next year. Like I said, I really would rather take a shot on one of the backup receivers later in the draft and hope one of them turns out to be something, drafting CD early this year.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. And I'm definitely on the Pollard train. If they don't add anybody, I wrote down he was second in yards per carry at 5.2 last year, and Zeke had 12 rushing touchdowns. So if they don't bring anybody in the draft, which I think is pretty unlikely, even if they don't get Bijan, I think they'll add somebody. And, even if they do, I'll still be in on Pollard. But, man, it's going to be wheels up if it's truly his backfield.
And I want to say he was the RB7 last year. I looked at it earlier, but he was the RB7 as a backup. So
yeah, he's going as RB11 right now, just behind Josh Jacobs and Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. So
I don't see it with Chubb still. I don't see why he's going up that high, but it just feels too low to me, to be honest. Cowboys defense is really, really good still. That didn't change much. It's actually gotten better. They got Gilmore now, so they're going to be running the ball whether they want to or not, because they're probably going to be ahead in a couple more games than you think. This is when it comes to like my season-long bets. I always do season-long bets on divisions. This is one of the divisions I'm less sure of compared to what I would have been last year. Last year, I felt really, really confident about the Cowboys not being good and the Eagles being good. Now it's like flipped reverse a little bit, but
yeah, and I think to your point too, Dak was almost a gift to fantasy players last year because of how many interceptions he threw. Mm-hmm. He was single-handedly keeping the other team scoring points against their good defense. And now, if he regresses towards the mean and gets a little better, you could be looking at an offense that doesn't have to throw the ball a lot.
Oh, big time. I think Pollard's going to be a smash play this year. And if he's going at 11 right now, he, like I said, he finished 7 last year on top of being the backup. He has RB1 overall potential. And I'll say that about a couple different people, I'm sure, today. But he really does have that true ceiling of just smashing it every single week, 15 to 25 a week. Still catches the ball. He has everything you want. And right now, if Malik Davis is the main backup, or Rojo, if he even makes the team, it's like,
right.
I don't know. Pollard's one guy that I'll probably have a lot of at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. Well, I can jump in on the Giants. I don't have anything too crazy here. I was just going to say they were 24th in pass attempts in 2022, and now they've added a bunch of volume-dependent slot wide receivers and Darren Waller. So, I think I'm kind of out on this wide receiver room as a whole. If I had to pick anybody from it, it'd probably be Hodgins and Slayton, but as we'll see later on in my mock draft, I don't think they're done at wide receiver.
I would agree with that. I would probably go the same thing in the wide receiver group, and I probably will take shots on these guys because I think that they're going to have a lot of games where they're trailing and have to throw the ball normally. And I think they're just a little bit better of an offense since they have so many pieces now, especially. They're going to score points this year. It's just a matter of who scores them. So I think this is a better wide receiver room to take shots on in comparison to somebody like, how we were talking about yesterday with Houston, where there's not a whole lot. It's a dart throw and hoping for the best. This is a dart throw with a lot of, upside to it, in my opinion. Daniel Jones was taking the world by storm at the end of the year. He's actually one of the guys that I don't know where his ADP is. I don't know where anybody's ADP is, I feel like. But He really seems like one of those guys that could have those weeks that just, even if he puts up 25, he can save you a week, versus he may not be that guy that's going at, throwing out of the world, putting up numbers like Hurts could, but he could save you if somebody gets hurt or just overall has an off week.
I think the nice thing with Daniel Jones, so he's going QB 12 behind Dak and Tua, and then ahead of Cousins and Rodgers, which I think, given his rushing ability, that seems reasonable. I think the nice thing is, if you do feel like you do, where you see some upside in these guys, Daniel Jones is going to be really easy to find a stack partner late in the draft, because you are just going to be able to tack one of these guys on at the end.
Yeah, literally any of them.
The only one who's moderately priced is Waller. He's, I think, going in the top 100 picks, which I think there's other tight ends that I want to go after.
Definitely. Yeah, I wouldn't want to chase the tight end in a new system. I'll say this probably 100 times over. Hawkinson was the one exception. I feel like that's actually worked out. I mean, if you want to count Gronk when he went to Tampa, but I mean, that's hard to argue that that's any different than what it was. We did see Bellinger have like sparks of greatness, so I guess there's potential with Waller to come in and make his presence known. But like you said, I think there's rather big group that I would be okay with taking a pick on instead of Waller at that point.
Last thing here, how do you feel about Saquon this year? He's currently RB5 ahead of Walker, Chubb, and Brees, and he was generally going in the mid-second round of early drafts.
It's hard because I've been up and down on Saquon just watching him, and I know he's had his injuries like every other running back does. If he plays, like I said, at the beginning of this year, we thought he was going to be the best thing. We thought we were getting rookie Saquon again. But this year, towards the end, he kind of started petering off and disappeared essentially when Daniel Jones started turning up the heat. So I think Saquon is a safe, like, if you're expecting him to kind of score, he's going to have good games. He's going to catch the ball still. I just don't see him having necessarily like top 5 upside as a whole. I think he'll be a safe one. But I don't think he'll, have a whole lot of like massive boom games. So that makes it like iffy for me with best ball.
Yeah, I was very in on him last year. Like, he was one of my bigger wins. He doesn't have the same explosive playability that he used to. Like, he's not quite at the Najee Harris level, but he's not breaking off that many big plays. I mean, I think he's extremely safe for volume and receiving work. So, like, I get why he's going where he is, but to me, I'd almost rather wait around, get an elite wide receiver in the second, and then take like the Breece Hall, the Tony Pollard.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely agree. Especially, I mean, I like both them guys more than Saquon personally. That's where I would go with my draft pick in that exact spot.
Yeah. So moving on to Washington, I don't have any huge takes here. My takeaways are actually on Jacoby Brissett. I was looking it up today. He ranked 12th in EPA per dropback in 2022, and he had an ADOT of 8.6, which was higher than guys like Burrow, Dak, and Daniel Jones. So this isn't even necessarily like a target Jacoby Brissett take. It's just I'm not buying the Sam Howell hype at all.
If Sam Howell plays, he could be really good for fantasy as a whole. So I like the idea of Sam Howell as a fantasy player. As an NFL quarterback, not so much. And there's a very, very real chance that he doesn't start half the games this year. Especially once we saw Jacoby Brissett kind of do pretty well in Cleveland. And when Cleveland started doing bad, that's when he wasn't starting. So that's where my brain lands on that. I like McLaurin. I like Dotson. Even Samuel, he did pretty okay at the beginning of the year. So I think any of these 3 receivers are worth taking a pick on. I would pick Dotson way before Samuel if I had the choice. I just think that's, second-year receiver, and he was hurt a good portion of the year, and when he did play, he was pretty good. Terry McLaurin also did a lot better at the end of the year than what I think he was given credit to, and it just seems like he is kind of a boomer bust guy, but that volatility in best ball, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, Terry's always a guy who I've been higher on than the market, and I think the quarterback concerns are hurting him this year, but he's going as wide receiver 27, which from a talent perspective just feels too low to me.
Yeah, give me all that.
Like he's going in the same range as guys like Christian Kirk and old Keenan Allen, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba and Michael Pittman. So
yeah, I would definitely. That seems like a very, very safe spot to have some, high end upside. But he'll ghost you. That's gonna
especially
happen.
Like if we do get Jacoby Brissett to come in there, like he supported Amari Cooper as a wide receiver 1 last year.
I think, well, just as a side, that's kind of more going back to Sam Howell too. I mean, it all depends on who the quarterback is. If you got Brissett throwing the ball, you're probably going to get more points than Howell.
Yeah.
It all depends on that. And I also think that plays a massive difference in the running backs too, given that Howell's a little bit more mobile than, how I don't even know how old Brissett is. He's lost his legs though, so it's one of those things where the running backs don't seem awful. Like they could have decent weeks, but right now I currently don't have much interest in either of the running backs.
They're both pretty cheap, both around running back 40. But I think that's the uncertainty around Bijan. So if they don't add, a strong running back in the draft, I'd expect both of those guys to rise. And, we're talking about in Superflex, they were going around pick 130. So even if we say like pick 110, I didn't hate Antonio Gibson there last year because I think they both have contingent upside if the other gets hurt. And that's why I would take them, not because I like either of them on the surface.
Yeah, I mean, they would have 3 down potential. And if you can get 3 down potential from any running back, you're pretty happy.
Yeah.
All right, let's do our over-unders. Oh,
yep.
Don't forget. Eagles over.
Yep, over.
Dallas over.
Yeah, I'll go over. Barely.
I think the Eagles are going to win 13. I think Dallas is going to win 11. Giants, I'm going under.
Is it 8.5 or 8.5?
Yep.
I'll go under. Yeah.
I don't believe the Daniel Jones hype as a whole. That's just where that ends. I think he's going to be great for fantasy. I think they're going to be an awful football team. Brian Gable can't do too much.
Yeah.
Commanders definitely going under.
All right, I'll take the over on Washington.
Fancy.
I'll believe in Brissett.
If he plays.
Yeah.
He might not have enough opportunities to win.
If we get the Sam Howell experience, the over is going to feel pretty bad there.
All right.
Moving on to the North. Obviously, we got the Lions. They've gone from worst in the division projected wise last year to now Vegas favorites and projected for almost 10 wins. I guess my concern with them for fantasy is the defense was so atrocious last year that it was basically always a shootout. And I think they've invested quite a bit in the defense, and I expect them to go defense early in the draft. I mean, there's rumors they could go QB, but I personally think they'll go defense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it seems kind of silly. Goff played amazing at home in particular last year. And it just seems like he's got I don't know. I think he may have 1 or 2 more years on his contract. It just seems like he's going to be that middle of the road guy. I always reference Jimmy G. It doesn't matter where he goes. It just seems like he's going to be a starter at some point, somehow, some way. He's going to be very, very average. But I want to say Goff showed a lot of upside at times too. So, and they're surrounding him with a lot of good players.
Yeah, I think if the schedule comes out and we get Goff at home in week 16 and 17, that's when we start hammering him for best ball.
Definitely.
Like, I mean, it wasn't even a joke last year. Like you said, he really was like 30 points at home and less than 10 on the road is what it felt like as a Goff manager in season long.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, overall, like right now, I like anything Detroit. I like a lot because, like you said, I think the defense, they've invested in the defense, but that doesn't mean that they're still not going to allow points. I still think that they're going to have higher scoring games. I think they're going to have a lot of over games for that matter. So I think there's going to be a lot of Amon-Ra points. I think when Williams comes back, he's going to have a lot of points. I think he's going to have that deep ball potential that we love for best ball. He might catch 3 passes, but he could go for 150 and 2.
Yeah.
And so I see that there being a path for that. Even the tight ends that I don't know how to say his name, Shane, but I know he had a 3 touchdown game last year, I believe.
Yeah,
2 or 3
right.
touchdown game.
I'd completely forgotten about that. I don't know if I'll be taking shots on the tight end room here, but for Amon-Ra, I mean, it definitely looks like wheels up, but I think the Jameson suspension is actually bad news for us just because now his price is going to get out of control.
Yeah.
People are going to steam him up. He was top 10 in yards per out run last year, had almost a 25% target share. And I don't have an exact number, but as someone who had him on his fantasy team last year, he went down inside the 5-yard line a ton. Mm-hmm. So I think he's well on his way to another top 10 season.
Yeah, and a lot of upside. You know, if he doesn't fall and falls 5 yards forward, scores a lot more points.
Yeah. And on the flip side, I think Jameson Williams was going like late 5th, early 6th round in the early drafts, and that was too expensive for me, I think. No, so if he falls a round or 2 because of the suspension, that makes him more appealing in my mind.
Definitely. We definitely need to touch on the running backs here just a little bit. I like David Montgomery a lot in this offense solely for the fact that if he just does what Jamal Williams did, I mean, the points are endless for that. Montgomery's a better running back. He's younger, stronger. I just think it's there for him, you know, for the taking. I don't think Swift's worth anything at this point anymore.
I'm with you 100%. We convince ourselves every year to be in on Swift because of the explosiveness and the pass catching. And it's just been very evident this coaching staff does not see him the same way the fantasy community does. So I did not have much Montgomery last year. You know, he's more of a chunk play guy than the true explosiveness, but you know, he's on a team now with an elite offensive line and probably going to be the clear one in this offense. Overall, I truly like taking shots on both of them, though, just because like we were talking about with Washington, if one goes down, the other, in theory, looks like they're in a good spot. So
it's hard for me with Swift just because we've seen flashes of greatness, but we've never seen consistency with it, even when he had all the opportunity for himself.
I guess the case I'll make in favor of Swift is like, even if he's not getting the volume, he at least has the talent to rip off a 30-yard touchdown, which could move you through in a playoff week. So ADP-wise, I was going to hit on this yesterday, but I saved it for today. Najee's going running back 14, more like 4th, 5th round pick. David Montgomery's going RB 19, or like 7th, 8th round. Like, I'll take Montgomery all day over Najee with that.
I won't draft a running back until that point right now. I mean, if I can get those guys as my 1 and 2, technically, like, then take some shots on, you know, just get some of those players like we kind of talked about that are going to be good for the first couple of weeks, kind of cover it while the rookies, you know, get like 1 or 2 guys like that to just help fill the void. And I mean, there's a lot to that could be pretty, you know, like, towards the end of the year, your wallet's going to be feeling heavy.
And then just to wrap up the thoughts here, Swift is going RB 23, which even in Superflex puts him in the top 90 picks, which I think I would love it more if he was, you know, just outside the top 100.
I think I will let another player slide to me.
Fair enough. All right, next up, we got the Vikings. I think it was, 11 one-score wins last year for them. I mean, just an insanely pure in close games last year.
That's why I'm so far out on them this year. I mean, you got people that are going to be good. There's no arguing that Justin Jefferson's going to be amazing. Alexander Madison will be amazing with whatever happens with the Dalvin Cook situation, which we're definitely going to have to talk about because we got some news about that today. But, I mean, other than that, KJ Osborne had a couple good games at the end of the year that would have really, really helped you in best ball. So if they don't add anybody, I like KJ Osborne a lot. I wouldn't touch Rager with the 10-foot pole kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've already talked about Hawkinson over and over. For whatever reason, he's just the guy that I keep coming back to. He won me a couple titles, I feel like, last year.
Yeah.
So that's, why I'm so high on Hawkinson. It just seemed like he was peppered with targets. And that's when they still had Thielen there. And Thielen, he's an old guy, but he still called for targets. It's that simple. He still was very, very good at one point. And Hawkinson I think Hawkinson's the clear 2 as of right now.
So on Hawkinson, he's going tight end 3 right now in ADP. Pretty close in ADP to Andrews, but they're both significantly behind Kelsey. He was 7th in yards per route run among tight ends last year, and he had 2 30-point games. So, when you're talking about trying to advance in a 16-team group, like Hawkinson's definitely a guy that you want.
So just because I know you've always been on Lamar and Andrews, like seems like every year in our main league you have them.
Yeah.
Which one would you rather have as of right now? Would you rather Hawkinson or Andrews?
Ooh. I think right now I'd say Hawkinson.
I would agree. It just seems safer.
Yeah, and with the Ravens too, they have likely now, we've seen they added OBJ, which doesn't necessarily scare me off Andrews, but seeing more and more of a drumbeat of DeAndre Hopkins to go there, like that could start to eat into Andrews' share of the pie unless they really are going to take a huge step forward in the passing game. So yeah, I think I lean Hawkinson right now.
I completely agree. It just seems like he was getting 8 targets every game, and it just when you have that kind of volume as a tight end, it's undeniable. Like most of the time, you're happy if your guy gets 5 targets, and you're hoping that one's just in the end zone. So
yeah,
Dalvin to Miami is the new rumor, or where he wants to go at least. Not necessarily a rumor; it's just his request, which that would definitely change everything I feel like I said about the Miami running back room yesterday.
And I think it makes a lot of sense with what we talked about and them not having the draft capital to go get a guy. So like that makes a lot of sense to me. I guess what's your take on where what price, I guess, would you feel okay with taking Dalvin if he ends up in Miami?
I still wouldn't have him top 5. Probably somewhere, I know Henry's going around 9, I think you said. So probably around there. I think the upside's a little bit higher with Dalvin still than Henry just because he catches more passes. So probably right before Henry. Definitely before Chubb still. I don't know why Chubb's that high.
Yeah. I think you're probably higher on him than me, but at the same time, those Miami running backs were really efficient. So I see the case. He's 27 right now. He'll turn 28 before the season starts. I was trying to look and see how many career carries he has. So he's over 1,200 career carries, which isn't great. But I guess that's really the only concern I have is the age cliff with him,
Well, I mean, at that rate, he's got one more year left in him.
Yeah.
I'll say this is the cliff.
He is going at RB17 right now, just behind Miles Sanders. And yeah, if he ended up in Miami, I definitely think he'd be shooting up closer to Najee and Ramondre at least.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. I think Najee's still a little undervalued, but it's just all comparison to who you want at the time, and who knows.
Yeah.
That's the glory of this. We don't know. We just like to speculate and hope for the best.
Yeah. I think on the flip side of the Dalvin situation, Madison to me, like I'm hoping this Dalvin Cook situation doesn't get figured out until after the draft so that I can get a couple Best Ball Mania lineups in and target Madison because he just doesn't wow me in terms of efficiency. Like we've seen that he can support the volume, but I just think I would rather take my shots on him while he's cheap rather than chase him up the board. Because I think if Dalvin leaves, I mean, he's going to fly up the board.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, yeah, he'd definitely be Madison. Madison probably wouldn't be top 10, but he'd be somewhere, depending how bullish you are on him. Because once again, he's shown when he's had the opportunity, from people would probably be pushing him close to fringe 1, high end 2 for sure.
Yeah. And I'll just throw out Ty Chandler or Kine Nwangwu are both their backup guys. They kind of fall in that Jerome Ford tier, like we were talking about yesterday, where I'd rather wait until I know they're the backup before taking flyers on them. But
definitely,
if they make sense in a build, I don't mind taking them as 18th round flyers.
Sure. Anything else to add on the Vikings? I think it's pretty straightforward. You draft Jefferson if you got one of the first couple picks, and
yeah, Jefferson's been going as the 101.
Yeah.
So, I guess with Osborne, I kind of feel the same way as Madison. Like, I don't love the profile, but he's looking like he's going to get good volume. So, at a reasonable price, I'll be mixing him in.
All right, Green Bay. I think my opinions on Green Bay will be very, very short. We talked about Rodgers a whole bunch yesterday, so if you have interest in that, that was our first topic of conversation. Going forward with Green Bay, I pretty much don't want to touch anything on this team. I think Jordan Love could be something. I just don't think this is the year. He's had okay starts when he's played, but I just don't think anything about it is going to be that good.
Yeah. I honestly have no idea what he's going to bring to the table. So, like, I'm okay with mixing him in. Like, if I have a Watson as a stack partner, just for the pure, like, mystery box of what he could be. And unless something crazy happens in the draft, I don't see why he wouldn't be starting late in the season, which is more than can be said for some of the other late round QBs. But yeah, otherwise I don't really have a super strong take here. I believe I read somewhere that in terms of wide receiver and tight end spending, they rank bottom 2 in the league at both positions. So I'm almost certainly expecting them to go wide receiver or tight end at pick 13 and probably address the other one later in the draft.
Yeah.
Even though that historically is not what they've done, I just don't see how they don't.
I think they throw it right back in Rodgers' face and take a rookie with the pick they got for him.
Yeah.
Just cause. So yeah. I agree with the fact of getting Jordan Love with somebody else, as a late round stack pretty comfortably. It's not the worst idea, especially if you got one of the better quarterbacks in the front part of the draft. I think Jordan Love would be a pretty decent pick if you're going that route. I wouldn't be relying on him as a big time player for, majority of your season. But if he dumps the ball off to Aaron Jones enough and he turns it into his yearly 40-point game, I think that'll turn into something. It all equates back to the passing game. So, and regarding the running backs, I don't like either of them anymore. I never liked Aaron Jones for anything ever. And then AJ Dillon, I was so bullish on last year, and I don't even know what happened with that.
Yeah, honestly, they're a backfield that I have a tough time with. Like, I just don't have a really strong opinion either way. Let me get a feel for where they're going. So Aaron Jones is RB 15. He's going near Miles Sanders right now, but they're also in a pocket of wide receivers that includes DJ Moore, Christian Watson, and Drake London. And then I'm guessing AJ Dillon is probably lower on board than that. Dillon's down at RB 37, which feels a little bit low to me, but
yeah, I would agree with that. But the upside is still there. I feel like they're still going to be running a lot of 2-back sets. I don't think like the playbook will change too drastically. I just think this year's playbook will be relatively simple, just solely for the fact that Jordan Love's getting worked in. He's been there all these years, but he's never really seen the field. So,
and we talked about it in the Rodgers bit yesterday, but historically the Packers have played very slow. I don't see that changing with Jordan Love. I think they're going to want to try to hide him as much as they can. So just doesn't seem like this is a smash for fantasy by any means.
All right. I think we go to the exciting team to talk about here.
Yeah.
Chicago Bears, probably going to be my favorite team to draft people from this year because it's so many pieces that could turn out to so many good things. Obviously, Justin Fields is QB1 upside through the wazoo. I mean, he probably could put up more points than Michael Vick, and I think that was 07 or 09. I don't remember. But, I mean, if anybody's going to do it, it probably will be Justin Fields. It just seems like his rushing ability is better than 80% of the running backs out there. That's a hot take, I feel like, but I mean, it's just proven. I've seen him in person do it, and it's just the tackles that this guy breaks and the way he just moves is so incredible. He's on another world when it comes to that.
To me, it feels like they going into the draft season, they are almost what the Eagles were last year from the offensive perspective. Like last year, it was like, oh, Eagles have talented wide receivers and a Russian quarterback who hasn't proven it, but we don't want to draft them because they're so run heavy. And it's like when you start adding in the extra receiver who's talented, like the play calling can shift. They very well could be more pass heavy, and all of a sudden this is a huge smash for fantasy.
And we know he can throw ropes. We know he can. We just didn't have the people to see it. Like I know when they added Claypool, they were hoping for that. Steelers got away with one there.
Yeah.
But it just seems like, DJ Moore is a play stretcher and he can do so many things. And Mooney's good. I mean, like, and even Claypool for this matter could still have those big plays. I mean, he's a big guy. He can go up over defenders and catch balls. You don't get that a whole lot anymore. It seems like you either have the people that look like AJ Brown and DK Metcalf. You got like those big guys, and then you got a bunch of small, speedy people.
Yeah.
There's not really that whole in between, at least in my opinion, that at least are more prolific players.
And with the Bears too, last year, and I was going to talk about it with the Falcons too, but the Falcons were one of the basically they had the fourth lowest passing rate of any team over the last decade. Well, the Bears had 50 fewer pass attempts than the Falcons did last year. So it was just insanely rush heavy for them. And I think if, they're going to be run heavy, there's no doubt about that. But even a little bit of regression towards a more normal offense could have major implications for these fantasy weapons.
Definitely. Yeah, I'll probably have a lot of, DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney in my initial drafts. I feel like and I don't even mind the late round flyer on Claypool at this point. He can't be going that high. Like I said, I think he'll still have spike games. Even St. Brown, I was, across the hall from him when we were in Chicago for the game, and all eagled up, of course, so I couldn't say anything. But he's got hands, and if he takes after his brother at all, the potential could come out of nowhere.
Yeah,
just a thought.
And I think obviously Fields scrambles a lot, but like another thing that you could make an argument for in favor of these wide receivers is the running back room that they have right now does not catch passes. Like I know Travis Homer is a pass catching back, but he's the clear third back in this group. Like Khalil Herbert and Donta Foreman do not catch passes.
I really want to be in on Foreman being the guy, just seeing how well he ran last year in Carolina, with Carolina being awful. And also, if you look at this, basically the Bears just took whatever players they wanted from Carolina, it seems like.
Yeah.
But it really, really seems like he still has the juice in him, even after the Achilles and everything else. It seems like he has juice. And I don't know, we've seen that Khalil Herbert has a bunch of juice too. So it's interesting to me that I really feel like one of these guys is going to end up being the main back, and the other guy is just going to, come in, and you're going to have a guy that's between the 20s and a guy that's going to score all the touchdowns. I feel like it's going to be very, very similar to like a Lions situation last year, where you have one of the two guys that just scores 15 touchdowns.
I loved Herbert last year. I had a lot of them, and I almost feel like this is the best case scenario for him, because bringing in Foreman is going to keep his price down, but it's not like a Bijan or a Zach Charbonnet who could potentially block him completely out of the backfield. So Herbert's going RB 34, Foreman RB 43, and I think I'm fine taking shots on both of them at those prices.
Yeah, I'll say, like I said, one of them is going to pay off. I'm basically probably on take turns drafting which one, when it comes to it. But I feel like there is going to be a lot of initial interest in those two players for me.
I think the only issue that I run into when thinking through the Bears is just the price on the premium stack. So if you want to get Fields and DJ Moore, that's probably going to be your third and early fifth round picks. So that's a lot to pay for an offense where we aren't totally sure that they're going to have the pass volume, but otherwise, like, it's hard to poke holes here.
Yeah. Even the tight ends could catch passes. That's the thing about this. It's a very loaded room when it comes to pass catchers at this point, and I really don't hate any of them. That's the part that sucks about it, is when you at least hate them, you at least have the idea of thinking like, nah, I'm gonna pass on this guy. And it's weird, like, thinking like that, since they barely pass the ball at all. But this year it just seems like it's gonna be different.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna address also the offensive line issues in the draft, and then that Fields isn't gonna have to try to run away from people, and he's not gonna have these scramble plays 24/7.
Man, I guess we kind of brushed over it as if it's not going to happen, and I feel like there hasn't been much steam around it lately. But I guess it's not out of the question that they take Bijan, which I would hate.
Yeah.
Give me cheap Khalil Herbert and Donta Foreman, because Bijan's a good pass catcher, and they're not going to throw to the running backs here. So that's just my 2 cents on Bijan to the Bears.
I don't think he's going to make it there. If I'm being completely honest, but I'm very hopeful he does.
Yeah. All right. Win totals here. We got Detroit 9.5.
I'm going over.
I'll go under.
Uh-oh, that scares me. Minnesota at 8.5. That's a tough one for me. I think they get over, but barely.
I'll go under again. I just think even if they lose, 50% of the one-score games, that's just gonna be a pretty big hit to their win total.
Packers at 7.5. I'm going under.
Yeah, I think I'll go under there as well.
Bears. So the Bears, I'm like really wanting to place bets on to like win the division even, but I'm also like on the complete opposite, because you see the path for a really good team, but it's just one of those things. Is it there yet or not? That being said, I'm going under.
All right. I go over on the Bears, in part just because I'm not really buying the other teams in this division. Like with Detroit, I don't know. Maybe it's just like the post hype. Like I was very in on them last year, and now it feels like everyone else has caught up. And so I'm like, I'd rather steer clear.
I think I'm just going to roll with Dan Campbell until I die.
That's fair enough. All right. Next up, we got the South, which is there's a lot of interesting things to talk through in the South, I think, starting with the Saints, who obviously added Derek Carr, probably the biggest quarterback move of the offseason besides Rodgers. So,
yeah, and I think it's good. I mean, it's obviously an upgrade. Olave really flashed at the beginning of the year, just kind of throughout the year. He was just a good receiver across the board. So I think Derek Carr will help him a lot.
I'm going to gush on Olave here. I took him in both of my early drafts. Got some tidbits here. He had a 23% target share and ranked top 10 in yards per out run. He was in line with guys like Diggs, Adams, and Amon-Ra in yards per out run. Among rookies with 50 targets, his yards per route run, and this is historically ranked only behind OBJ, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase. And now he's getting a quarterback upgrade with Derek Carr. So I am all in on Olave, assuming he stays, early to mid third. I would much rather, at cost, have Olave than Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, well, definitely. I would say there's too many variables with Wilson. I mean, the only receiving variable here right now is if Michael Thomas actually shows up, plays, and turns into something. I mean, I don't know how you go being from so elite to just completely off the cliff. Yeah, how do you feel about him?
He is 30. I mean, I could see a world where he brings something back to the table, but I do think regardless that Olave is going to be the one in this offense. So I'm not letting 30-year-old Michael Thomas scare me off of Olave this year.
No, that I agree with. I'll say Olave definitely at that cost right now. After those metrics, I mean, how do you argue it?
Yeah. Not much else to add on the receivers besides draft Chris Olave.
Yes. Jamal Williams, I definitely think at the beginning of the year, somebody we talked about yesterday, and the fact of, that Kamara is probably getting some sort of suspension. He's likely to get some sort of suspension, at least for the beginning of the year. So if you want to draft somebody that can cover the rookies, at least till they get worked in a little bit more, Jamal Williams will be excellent.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think part of the hard part is, do we know? I mean, obviously we don't know because it hasn't been announced, but with Kamara, how confident are we that it's going to be an early season suspension versus this continuing to get dragged out? What if Kamara gets suspended during the playoff weeks?
Yeah, I mean, then easily Jamal could be the cash man for the whole entire thing across the board. We've seen it in the Saints offense so many years, and I know it's not Peyton anymore, but the running backs normally have room to succeed. And we saw Derek Carr do that last year with Josh Jacobs, just kind of his play style. He started dumping off the ball a lot more. Jacobs never caught the ball until last year. And I just remember watching different Raiders games because I had Devontae on every team and just being like, why are you still giving him the ball? I mean, that was the only play call. They gave it to him, or he ran a little route and threw it to him. So I think Derek Carr is kind of also settling down in his, his big energy throws, just kind of laying down and, making more smart plays.
I think I did have a couple points on Williams that have me a little bit worried, but with him changing teams, I don't know how applicable some of these are, but he had 17 rushing touchdowns last year, finished as the RB11 in half PPR. And he had 15 total touchdowns over the previous 4 seasons combined. So it feels like we saw the ceiling season from him last year, and it was still barely an RB1. But, for best ball at cost, if Kamara is missing time, then I think he's fine.
Definitely.
And I'll just add too, for Kamara, he was getting 60 to 80 targets over the last 2 years versus closer to 100 in the seasons prior to that. So between that and the suspension, and now you've got Derek Carr in there, who maybe he won't check down as much. as like an Andy Dalton. I just have a hard time clicking Kamara.
Yeah, I'll say I think no Kamara will be drafted for me currently. Even just last year, he was so inefficient. It just didn't seem like it was, I don't know. It just wasn't there for him. And after having Jamal just kind of always be the guy that punches it in, just seems like the Saints are going to score more points, especially in a division like this. And I'm hoping for the best in that, where it kind of turns out where they get inside the 5 and they just turn and give them the ball.
Yeah, I could see it.
You can always draft Taysom Hill on the off chance too of him deciding to be the running back quarterback.
God, it was so terrifying last year because I did not have very much Taysom Hill, and then he came out at like some point during the first month of the season and put up a 30 burger, and I was like, oh my God, we're going to watch Taysom Hill break best ball. So I'm very glad that did not happen.
Yeah, I'll say I don't really have much else to say on the Saints. They're not the most interesting team this year. They just got a new quarterback, and Kamara might be out. Draft Olave at cost right now, for sure.
Yep, I think that sums it up pretty well. I guess with the Falcons, they lost Mariota but added Taylor Heineke, so it feels like Desmond Ritter's on pretty thin ice. They feel a lot like Washington, where I'm not confident in either of these guys starting week 17, and then it seems like a low chance at this point, but they could add a rookie in the draft. So I don't know any takeaways on the QBs there.
No, I don't have any interest in any of them. I think they're both going to start games this year. Who knows when? Like you said, when. I wouldn't want to be rolling the dice on a team that I don't think is going to be incredibly efficient. As we know, they're super, super run heavy in general, and I don't think that's going to change, especially after the draft. I think this is the spot for Bijan. I don't want it to be. I don't know. We know he's going to get opportunity. It's just the thing is they're not going to score a lot of points. I don't know. Cordero showed up. It's hard to argue, though, with Cordero coming around and putting up.
I think it's a good spot for Bijan's fantasy value. I don't think he'll have any problems taking over this backfield. I would just hate it because I love Drake London and I love Kyle Pitts. I was overweight on both of them last year, and it just feels like you said, they're going to be run heavy. The question is how run heavy. I mean, it was borderline historic how run heavy they were last year. So I do think they'll regress a little bit like the Bears, but not a ton, and especially not if they add Bijan. So that's my concerns with London and Pitts. I mean, they're pretty clearly the top two options here. They're both talented. It's just a volume question.
We can talk about our little bet we got going on.
Yeah.
So we're starting to make I got a note in my phone of different bets that we're making throughout the years. And this year, the first one we did was half PPR, Kyle Pitts or Freiermuth, and I took Freiermuth.
Yeah.
So we're going to see how
I will say I was doing some research today and feel a little bit worse about my end of the bet because Pitts and Freiermuth had almost an identical yards per route run, but Pitts only had like 200 snaps last year. So
he didn't play the whole year though.
Yeah.
He had a lot of injury. I mean, I feel like it always goes back to injury, but who knows? For
just a little bit of Drake London love, obviously I talked about the negatives. He had a higher yards per route run than Garrett Wilson and a 28% target share, which was third in the NFL among wide receivers. So
and it was 6 targets a game.
I know. Yeah, it's like compared to Wilson and Olave, Drake London was going kind of in that DJ Moore tier, like late 4th, early 5th. So like given the talent profile, I'm okay with it, but especially since we don't know who to stack Drake London with, he's kind of a tricky
Yeah.
click right now. It's like I want to bet on talent, but it's just hard to see the avenue there.
I do think it is something to be aware of, though, with the idea of, he may have had the 28% target share, but like we said, they've ran the ball crazy last year. So he really was only getting like 5 to 7 targets a game. So
Yeah.
not only, but compared to other receivers that you're hoping to get 10 plus, or especially just from a 1 on a team.
Yeah.
If you're getting 5 on your 1, you're going to be disappointed. But I don't think that Drake London's a bad pick. I'm not going there. It's just obviously with any uncertainty at quarterback, it's kind of scary.
So I want to gauge how out you are on Kyle Pitts. He's going as the tight end 5 ahead of Goddard, Waller, Ingram, and then obviously Njoku and Freiermuth. Like, I know at cost you're definitely going to take Freiermuth, but
yeah, for best ball, I see Pitts having the higher ceiling, obviously, so I understand that being factored in. I don't think I could take him before Ingram. I don't think I could take him before Goddard, but I think I would go before Waller. Like I said, I don't know what it is with Waller. Like I said, we talked about the receiver room being kind of spread out so far across there, and we saw sparks of the tight end showing up in New York, but I don't know if it's going to be worth the payout. I think I would rather go with Pitts, knowing that he's going to be at least the 2, and 3 at the worst in this offense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, well, next we got the Panthers, who kind of overhauled their whole offense. I've got Bryce Young penciled in there. We kind of had a little bit of a scare yesterday thanks to Reddit. Somebody claiming that Will Levis was going to go number 1 overall. That steam has kind of died down at this point. It sounds like Bryce Young's the lock to go at 1. So I think it's pretty safe that we can assume he's going to be there. They added Chark and Thielen, neither of which really excite me at this point. Hayden Hurst as well. Hayden Hurst is one of those guys who is just going to catch the ball and fall down. So you're either betting on volume or touchdowns there.
Seems like he always gets it done, though. When you need to get it done, he seems like he's a guy that you can rely on. I don't know.
And you've got a rookie quarterback, so maybe you make that argument, like tight end's the rookie's best friend, that kind of deal. But yeah, Chark in terms of yards per route run was very middle of the road. I know he offers a little bit of deep ball upside, but Thielen to me is just total dust at this point. Like, I don't think I'm going to have any Thielen whatsoever.
Yeah, I might take him if he falls quite a bit, but I don't see it. Same thing. I think he's just old, and he got the bag at the right time because it wouldn't have been hanging around much longer. I do like DJ Chark to a certain extent if he is the true 1 in this offense. We've seen him have pretty good success everywhere he's been at times, and I think Bryce Young coming in, he's going to need 1 receiver that's going to be that guy that you just rely on. I think that's just kind of like the given with a rookie quarterback.
And I don't have it noted here, but I wouldn't be surprised if they take a rookie. I think they pick, around 39 or 40 in the second round. So guys like Josh Downs and Jalen Hyatt might still be on the board at that point. Thielen, this surprises me. Thielen's going as wide receiver 60, Chark wide receiver 64. Like, if that holds, I don't think I'll have any Thielen because I would rather just wait a couple spots and take Chark.
Yeah, definitely. I think the running back room is very interesting when it comes to that. Let's stick with Bryce Young. Do you think you're going to end up with any Bryce Young in best ball?
Yeah, solely for the fact that I feel pretty confident that as a early first round rookie, he's going to be getting starts late. Like we mentioned it a little bit yesterday when we talked about Richardson. Like, he doesn't really offer a rushing profile, so I'm not like expecting him to set the world on fire. But I think he'll be out there in week 17, and that's worth something at cost.
Yeah, if I was to take any of the rookie running backs right now, I think Bryce Young is the clear pick, solely for the fact that we know he's going to be starting. and he doesn't play super, super dangerous, like, he should start the entire season, and we shouldn't have any worries about that.
So
and I think he should have a consistent
Superflex ADP, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are going right next to each other. They're going behind Jordan Love, and they're both going ahead of Anthony Richardson.
I think I would take him before Love right now.
I think so too. I think I'd take all three of them ahead of Love.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that one yet. We'll see how it goes after the draft plays out.
I guess Stroud in particular could end up on a team who's like,
he could be a backup.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess I'll walk that back a little bit. But you were gonna, I guess, with the getting back to the running backs, I saw some quotes recently, and again, that don't want to fall into the coach falling for the coach speak, but there were some quotes coming out of Carolina that make it sound like they view Miles Sanders as a 3-down back potentially.
And that's the point. What I was going to make. I mean, we've seen McCaffrey run the show on a terrible offense all the time he was there. And I don't think Miles Sanders is CMC by any means, so don't put that in my mouth. But I literally think that he has like a floor of 12 points going forward. If they don't change the offense too crazy, I mean, his floor should be 12. He'll be catching 5-6 passes a game pretty consistently, and even if he's the most efficient, least efficient running back I've ever seen. Man runs backwards, sideways, and gets 2 yards over and over and over again, and then he'll pop one off for 60. It just is the runner he is. And I hated him in Philly as a fantasy player, but I think in Carolina it just fits so much better.
And I don't really see them being a pass-heavy team with a rookie quarterback. Like, I think they're going to lean on Miles Sanders. So he's going RB16, right around Aaron Jones, and I think we'd both be on Sanders in that case. Chuba is basically free, which I don't mind tacking him on late, just always as a contingent value guy too.
Yeah, I mean, that's been kind of the baseline since he's been in the league, I feel like.
Yeah, he just has not been good when he's gotten chances. So, like, he's not going to come in and set the world on fire. But if Miles is out, he can provide you, 10 points.
Yeah, I think Carolina is kind of, like I said, they're like one of the more exciting teams to watch this upcoming year because there is so much uncertainty. I mean, this whole division is uncertain, but at least Carolina has something to be excited about versus like the Falcons probably don't. Like Bijan might be their only bit of excitement, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we'll see. It's why we watch football and play the sports that we play, the fake sports that we play.
Yeah. I think so. I'm going to lay out some numbers here for the Bucks because I am very concerned for them this year. So these are from Rich Hrybar at Sharp Football. Last year, their offensive line ranked 25th in pass block, 31st in run blocking. Brady had the fastest time in the league as far as getting the ball out of the pocket. It was rarely over 4 seconds. Baker ranked much slower and was over 4 seconds almost 20% of the time. And then just going into the running back room a little bit, Rachaad White, out of 44 qualifying running backs, he ranked 38th in yards per carry, 33rd in EPA per rush, 42nd in 10-yard runs, and 43rd in yards after contact.
And Fournette must have been right in front of him.
Yeah, this is not good.
Yeah, honestly, there is not much good that's coming out of Tampa this year, especially if they don't address anything with their offensive line. Because after hearing that, I mean, there's no arguing that it's as hot garbage gets. Which I don't think we really need to talk much about Baker Mayfield and even the running back room. I mean, White can be kind of interesting, but like I said, after those metrics, it just doesn't seem like it's there. Chase Edmonds ain't going to do much.
I think the only argument you can make for for White is he's like a poor man's Najee because he can pass catch. He's going to probably get the volume unless they unexpectedly bring in a talented rookie. So like that would be the pro Rachaad White case. But I think if they don't take a rookie in the draft, he's going to start getting steamed up, and I'm not going to chase him.
I would chase him if we saw something bump up a little bit with the offensive line, but otherwise, then there's really nothing good showing that those metrics are going to improve. I think the real only question when it comes to this team is, do we draft Mike Evans and Chris Godwin?
I have a hard time getting behind them, and I love Chris Godwin's, and obviously Mike Evans won me a lot of money last year. I think the case you can make for targeting them is if they get traded. Like, what if Godwin gets traded to the Chiefs and you're drafting him at the Bucs price right now? So, like, I'll still mix them in, but it's not going to be for the sake of having a Bucs stack.
Yeah, that would be even somewhere like Buffalo too. Just be another possession guy. I think it's weird because I talked about it yesterday with Hopkins, and I like the idea of Godwin going there more than Hopkins and keeping the offense more balanced. Almost, I think it would be a downgrade to Diggs either which way. But who knows? It's so hard to even get behind these guys, especially after someone like Mike Evans, like you said, who won a lot of people a lot of money with what he did in championship week. And, otherwise the entire season, he pretty much was a ghost.
I think what's the scariest part is, we can tell ourselves these stories about the trades, but Tampa should be tearing it down, just rebuild, go after Caleb Williams next year. And they're not. They've been making moves as if they're going to try to compete. So that has me a little worried that we're not going to see these guys get traded, in which case I think I'm out.
Well, I've heard they're trying to trade pieces of their defense too, so we'll see. And a lot of this is going to get cleared up because, the only trade I or I feel confident that's going to happen is the 3 spot. There's going to be more trades that happen in the first round this year. We just don't know who they are yet. And the Bucs could very much trade up, and they could have defensive pieces going elsewhere to kind of bolster that trade up spot. So.
Yeah.
See. And even like you said, either of these 2 receivers could go.
Right.
All right. Let's talk about the Saints over under here. 9.5.
They'll go over. They got a pretty easy division here. So.
Yeah. I think they got about 6 wins from there, and I think they can pull 3 off somewhere else. So or 4, I guess. Somewhere else I'll go over.
All right. Falcons is 8.5.
I'm going under confidently on that one.
Yeah, me too.
Carolina at 7.5. I would say under because they ain't got no receivers.
Yeah, it's a tough line. I think it's a good spot. I'll go under. It feels like we convince ourselves these teams are going to take a big step with a rookie, and it's usually year 2. So I'll go under.
And Tampa at 6.5. Definitely under.
Yeah, that's an easy one for me.
So, congrats on the Saints.
Yeah.
I do think there's a chance that they don't win the division, but they are the best team in this division. Yeah,
I think they can feel pretty good about their chances. So, last one we got is the NFC West, and while there's some spots to talk through here, I think this has been a pretty light division in terms of differences from last year.
And nobody's moved. I was just looking over that the other day, I was seeing that, and I was like, nobody appealing has been added in the whole division whatsoever. Really, the only thing that's concerning across the board is the potential DeAndre Hopkins trade. Otherwise, nothing's really happened.
Yeah. The Cardinals are tough to me between D-Hop probably getting moved and the Kyler injury.
Yeah.
They were a team that I was overweight on last year, and I feel like you see their Vegas odds. They're tied with Houston for the lowest odds to win the Super Bowl. I feel like I'm going to convince myself, when you see Marquise Brown, Rondale Moore, these guys who are explosive and they're there later than you expect in a draft, like I'm going to have a hard time staying off of them, even though this offense could potentially be terrible. Yeah. So I'm worried that I'm going to have too much Arizona.
Well, I guess we'll just start with Arizona since we're diving in there. So let's just assume D-Hop gets traded. I think I'd be okay taking the late round flyer on Dortch just because another one of those random guys that just showed up. If you're taking them with your last, 2 picks, whatever. James Conner is the one guy I would have interest in solely for the fact that I think he's going to get plenty of touches. I still think he's going to catch the ball enough, solely for the fact that if it's Colt McCoy being the starter, he's not going to do anything crazy. He's going to try to be safe, dump off the ball, get a couple of yards here and there. So I think that James Conner is probably about the only realistic player that I'm excited about on Arizona in any way. Like I said, I'd take Dortch late as just a flyer, as a high-end flyer, in my opinion, especially if Kyler comes back or when Ryan Tannehill comes there.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I think Rondale Moore could be interesting. He was like historically low ADOT for a wide receiver in his first 2 years. So maybe the new coaching staff comes in and actually decides to throw him the ball a reasonable distance down the field. Because he is explosive. Though. It's just, yeah. I guess the only thing with James Conner that gives me some pause, and I think James Conner has been really cheap, is the Cardinals have been linked a lot to Gibbs. I don't think it makes sense for them from a team building perspective to take Gibbs, but I mean, it's been out there quite a bit.
It's just hard for me to envision being a rookie running back this year, solely for the fact that knowing all these big names are still out there that still have some juice left in them. Like, why would you want to get drafted? A lot of these rookie running backs are going to get held out on. They're going to become later round picks. They're going to get paid less, and everything about it just so much less appealing than what it would normally be. Like if this would have been 2 years ago, it would have been a whole nother world.
Yeah. Well, I think you're going to be able to get plenty of James Conner if you want him because he's RB28 and probably in non-super flex going to be going around pick 100.
Yeah.
So
I think that he'll probably be rostered on almost every team for me then. At that.
I don't think I will be quite that aggressive, but I can definitely see mixing him in.
I don't think he'll get a lot of touchdowns, but I just see that the volume still is going to be there. Every running back he's the bell cow on the team. There's no denying that. He's going to get 15 handoffs and probably, I would guess close to 5 targets a game still. Ish, guesstimate.
Yeah.
But, even if he gets 50 targets throughout the year, with those spike games, I think that he's probably worth that spot in particular.
Yeah. Only other thing I'll add on Arizona is Trey McBride is going as tight end 25. He's virtually free. He's going at the same price as Hayden Hurst, Isaiah Likely, Jake Ferguson. So, second year tight end, I think he was a second round pick last year. So, if we do have a quarterback who's not Kyler, maybe that means more short passes to Trey McBride.
It's reasonable. Well, it's just a matter if it translates. I don't know. If Ertz comes back too, when he was there, he was commanding a lot of attention.
Yeah.
So we'll see about that. Never know about your old tight ends anymore.
Yeah.
Seems like they just keep doing it. So, all right. Speaking of older tight ends, I guess at this point, let's jump into the Niners.
Yeah. All right. So I'll set the stage here. Over the course of the last 2 years, I have been wrong about Trey Lance in back-to-back years. Very heavy on him, wrong both times. 2 years ago, I was very heavy on Trey Sermon, wrong about him. Last year, I was very heavy on Ty Davis-Price, wrong about him. So whatever I spew out for the Niners here, do the opposite and you'll be okay. So I want to hear your thoughts on the Niners instead of mine.
So it's hard, I feel like we got news about Trey Lance talks again. I don't remember where it was. I feel like I remember reading that. But I mean, that's been spin up and down, up and down, up and down. And a lot of it's going to be cleared up tomorrow. If Trey Lance gets traded, it's going to be a day one trade. So with that being said, I don't think that Trey Lance will be the starter. I said this, I told you this a while back, that I don't think they brought Sam Darnold in to be temporary. I think while Purdy, may not start the first couple games, I think Darnold can be functional enough. Just like I think he's worse than everybody that I normally would talk about being that middle of the road kind of guy, but I think he can be functional enough with that defense. Their over-under win total says enough about him. With the question of all Trey Lance being traded, is Purdy the starter? It doesn't matter who their starter is. The defense will cover them, and they don't have to throw the ball far. With CMC, Elijah Mitchell's still one of the fastest guys, it seems like. Like, his burst is incredible. Debo's the best screen catcher in the game, and Kittle somehow just gets off people and then gets through people.
Yeah. So I think I'm with you on that. I think the plan is Purdy and Darnold as the backup, and I think they're pretty well done with Lance at this point. I do think there's some potential for this to drag on. Like, they may not trade Lance until they know Purdy's healthy, so maybe by the time training camp rolls around, which that would suck. I would rather get some clarity here because, as I said, I just cannot figure this team out for the life of me.
I will say that obviously CMC will be a high, first-round pick. That always will be a first-round pick until he quits, seems like. I will have a lot more Elijah Mitchell than expected because I don't remember the exact snap split, but I think when he was there, he was still getting close to like 35-40% of the snaps. And, CMC's history isn't the best, obviously. So I think that Elijah Mitchell probably will end up on a lot of my teams as somebody with a lot of high-end possibility.
Nope, he was a guy I wanted to talk about too, and I'm in lockstep with you there. And Elijah Mitchell is going RB42, so behind the Washington backs, behind A.J. Dillon, Jamal Williams. I think at that price, Mitchell's going to make a ton of sense, especially if you're in a build where you're waiting at running back.
And especially, too, in this division in particular, the Niners could have everything locked up. They might just, depending on how the other teams are doing, they might be resting CMC week 17, giving somebody like Elijah Mitchell, 20 touches.
That's a great point.
I'll say, because if they could A, be the 1 seed and it could be done by week 17, or B, if they're 2 or 3, it doesn't really matter who you play at that point. I just think there's a lot of potential in Elijah Mitchell this year still.
Yeah. Outside of that, I think we know what we're getting at wide receiver and tight end. I don't think we need to rehash it too much. I'll just add that right now at ADP, Debo is wide receiver 16. Ayuk is wide receiver 33. So I think at cost, I'm pro Ayuk.
Yes, I would agree.
Kittle is tight end 4. I think he's still going like late 4th, early 5th, pretty similar to where he was last year. And I think that makes sense.
As long as Purdy's the starter, I'm in on Kittle. Until that changes him, my opinion won't change. I think Kittle and Purdy will be excellent like they were.
Yeah, I think the Trey Lance is almost a downside argument against these receivers just because he's going to run the ball so much more.
And Ayuk had kind of, I don't want to say it was a breakout year because it wasn't a breakout, but it just seemed like he was actually feasible versus, not existing beforehand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we're about on the same standpoint, which kind of scares me about these guys.
Yeah. With Seattle, really not a whole lot has changed except for a couple of running backs departing. I will add with them that they have quite a bit of draft capital, second most based on this metric. So I think they are live to take a running back, and I've even seen them linked to wide receivers at, I don't know if it's pick 20 or 21 that they have. 20. So I've seen Addison mocked to them there. But I'll just say with them, if they don't add anybody, if they're truly just running it back, I'm going to be very pro Seahawks because it's kind of like the Dolphins argument. You've got two elite wide receivers in a concentrated offense. And that's what I want for best ball.
And when it comes to that too, I will have a little bit of DK, but I know Tyler Lockett's ADP is obviously going to be lower. It's always going to be lower. But it seems like Tyler Lockett is literally the king of best ball. He always manages to get the work done. And, having him on one of my teams last year, it just seemed like he became one of those guys that you could almost rely on, which didn't seem like it was ever going to exist. When it comes to the receivers upside, I think it matters if Geno is going to be able to repeat. I think that's more of the concern.
Yeah. He was really good in terms of EPA last year. I don't have the exact rank, but I'm pretty sure he was top 10. So, yeah, to your point on Metcalf and Lockett, Metcalf is wide receiver 15, Lockett wide receiver 30. Lockett's still going like a 7th, 8th round pick.
Yeah.
Like I need a way to build a GUI into the underdog interface that like rings a bell every time I'm in the 7th round. Like take Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because you're getting the same guy in my eyes. They're so completely different receivers, size wise, build wise. They couldn't be any more different. But when it comes to like the statistics, that they're about the same. I think Lockett was better last year for overall points.
Yeah, I don't have a comparison of their total points. The only like pro DK thing I'll add is last year he only had 6 touchdowns, and the previous 2 years he was in the double digits. So he's definitely. I'm perfectly fine taking DK at cost, but when it comes to the raw exposures, I'll probably have more Lockett.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that I'll end up with a lot of Lockett and probably about, 2 or 3 drafts with DK where I felt a little spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so last year Lockett was wide receiver 12 and DK was wide receiver 18.
Wow. Okay.
Lockett had about 18 more points than him on the year. So a whole game's worth, that adds up.
Yeah. And Lockett is 30, but man, it just feels like we do this every year as a community where we write off Tyler Lockett, and he just always proves us wrong.
Doesn't get hurt, doesn't get tackled.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Ken Walker? I mean, he wasn't hugely involved in the passing game, but he did show a lot of breakaway ability.
Yeah, we know Pete Carroll likes to run the ball. If that's one thing, that goes back to the USC days with Reggie Bush. I think Pete Carroll will continue to slam the ball down his throat with, if DJ Dallas is the backup, why wouldn't Ken Walker be successful this year?
Yeah. He's going as RB6, which kind of surprises me. I didn't think the community would be quite that high on him. I'm fine with him going over Chubb, but I think I'm Brees over Ken Walker.
That I agree with.
Jacob. Yeah, we did. We went into this debate yesterday, so we don't have to rehash it. But I think there's avenues to failure just because of the lack of pass game work for Ken Walker.
Yeah. It seemed like he was pretty much a big play guy. I don't think he was bad without the big plays, but it seemed like a lot of the games he had at least one run that kind of gave his buffer for the week. So,
Yeah.
once again, I think he'll be fine, especially for best ball. But it's just hard to draft anymore. It just seems so hard to draft running backs early.
Right. Yeah. Let me read off some of the wide receivers who are going right next to him. Walker. We got Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave. Those are the kinds of guys I want on my team.
Exactly. Just the high end, the injury risk is so much lower. The high end potential of them scoring 20-25 is a lot more safer in my eyes.
I just think it's
of your money.
easier to find replacement level points late at running back versus wide receiver. Like that's the whole crux of the argument for me.
Yeah. I'll say, because running backs get hurt all the time. You have no idea. You're taking a stab in the dark on anything past wide receiver 2 on most teams.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I'll probably have Ken Walker a couple times, but I don't see it being as frequent at that cost right now. All right. Now, last but not least, our favorite team, the Rams.
Yes.
I don't think it goes without saying that Cooper Kupp very much has the potential to have another world beater season, especially if you look at the rest of the roster in particular. I know their whole offensive line was hurt. Stafford was hurt. It's hard for me to envision a world where Cooper Kupp doesn't end up with 1,500 yards again and, double-digit touchdowns.
Yeah, he was still elite before he got hurt. He's top 5, I think, in yards per out run. So I don't have any questions about his ability. I think my fear here is Stafford going to return to form? He was already injured frequently when he was in Detroit, just always like nicked and banged up. So that's what scares me here, especially with some offensive line concerns. And then it doesn't seem like a huge deal, but like losing Baker, it just feels like the floor is really low at quarterback now.
Yeah. I remember when we did our dynasty startup, it had Stafford projected for 5,000 yards, and I just couldn't even fathom the idea of 5,000 yards being capable in a season. And it just doesn't seem like 4,000 almost seems like tough with the receiving group he's got, excluding Kupp. I think Van Jefferson could be a very good best ball pick. Skoranek had some traction. I know his name got brought up kind of towards the end of the year as somebody. Tutu Atwell was at the beginning of the year last year, but I don't have much interest in either of those guys. I think Van Jefferson, like I said, could have some potential now as the full-time 2 with, another year experience, off-season, training camp.
Yeah, I'm with you that Jefferson, to me, is the more interesting option of those 3. The only argument I'll make in case of tacking on a Skoranek or a Tutu Atwell is they're both basically going undrafted, even in the 20-round Superflex format. And, we are talking about a tournament with over 600,000 entries. So, we're going to have to get unique somehow.
Sure.
People aren't going to be taking them. If you do sneak them into a final lineup and all of a sudden they catch a touchdown, that's pretty valuable.
Yeah. What about Cam Akers? Because obviously he kind of was the definition of a roller coaster season last year.
Dude, it was rough with him for me last year because I was almost a full fade on him, and then he went off in the playoff weeks, almost buried a couple of my teams. He's going as the RB24 right now between Swift and Rachaad White, and I think I would take Akers over both of those guys just because of what he was showing late in the year. I mean, there's enough enough flash for me to believe that the injury was holding him back, and now he's moving past that.
And we know he's the clear one at this point. It is a matter of if their offensive line is fixed. Everybody was hurt. I mean, they had nobody starting for him at the end of the year. So,
yeah, and I was just curious where they were at in terms of draft capital. It looks like they're, roughly middle of the road.
They're almost getting that even. Good for them.
Yeah. Slowly chipping their way back from the Stafford deal. But I was just curious in terms of could they potentially bring in a guy to back up Akers? I still think Akers is going to be the one regardless, but that would make me a little concerned.
No Ronnie Rivers coming out the blue.
No. And I think too, with Akers coming off the Achilles, not only did he flash late, but now we've seen Donta Foreman have some success too. So the Achilles is maybe not the death sentence it used to be.
Yeah, I don't know if the surgery's just gotten better, if there's different technique now than what it used to be, or, if it's the same thing, if they're just tying it back together and hoping that it functions and doesn't scar too bad. It's kind of across the board. If that has improved and it's the correlation is showing that the Achilles is no longer something that, like you said, is the career ender.
Yeah.
So.
I actually, to wrap us up here at tight end, I actually have some takes on Tyler Higbee.
Oh.
I was overweight on him last year, which was for the most part a disappointing experience, but he did pop a little bit in the playoff weeks, so maybe that's why I'm not totally sour on him. But I went back and looked. He had more, and obviously Hawkinson wasn't great while he was with the Lions, so that impacts this a little bit. But Higbee had more 10-plus point games last year than Hawkinson, and Higbee was 10th in yards per route run at the tight end position. And Higbee is going as tight end 18 right now.
Yeah, that's not a bad guy to grab at the end there.
Yeah.
He could be the 2. I mean, there's with how many screenplays they ran last year with him.
Yeah.
It's not impossible.
I'll need to go back and look and see what his numbers were like the year that Kupp really went off. I mean, maybe he wasn't as involved that year when Stafford was healthy, but
right. Yeah, well, we can see it wouldn't be bad to see what kind of correlation. I know the one game, I don't remember who. I feel like it was Denver when Baker came and had his 50-point game on Thursday Night Football or whatever. Just threw the ball to Higbee over and over and over again.
Yeah, and he had a pretty good game against Denver too late in the year. But yeah, some of the names that are going after Higbee right now, Irv Smith, Gerald Everett, who is kind of interesting, Mike Gesicki in New England, Jake Ferguson in Dallas. I'm glad to wait and take Higbee as my third tight end in a lot of these builds.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right. Any final thoughts here before we do the over-unders?
No, let's get into it. 49ers at 11.5. I'm going over.
Yeah, I'll go over, but barely.
Yeah, I think they're going to be another one of the teams that's close to 13 wins. Obviously, this is going to change a lot when we get the schedules, but I think we actually do know who everybody's playing. I haven't looked too far into it.
Yeah, we know the matchups. We just don't know the weeks.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll have to take a deeper look and to give a more accurate. This is just off the top of my head. Seattle at 8.5. Oh man, they're probably in the division just because I can see 4 wins between the Rams and the Cardinals. I would say over.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go over there. I mean, maybe that line feels low to me, but maybe it's just because they were so much better than expected last year. Maybe Vegas is banking on some regression.
Yeah. Rams at 7.5. I'm going to confidently say under on that one.
I think I'll go over and assume Stafford stays healthy. But I'm like an 8 win over there.
500. as close to 500 as it can
Yeah.
be. And Arizona at 5.5. I think that's pretty obvious with they're trying to trade Buda Baker. They're you know, not going to have Kyler to start the year. I really don't think D Hop ends up playing a single, down in Arizona again. I don't think he'll do any of the training camp stuff. So I think that's over.
Yeah.
So the wide receiver room doesn't look too hot. I think it's under.
Yeah, I think that's under. I think, unlike the Bucks, I think the Cardinals actually are going to tear it down. Right. I don't even know if Kyler plays this year, just for the if we get 2 months into the season and they're 1-7, why are you going to put Kyler out there?
Yeah, it seems kind of silly.
Yeah. So wrapping things up here, we're going to go through. We each made a quick mock draft, despite the fact that we know absolutely nothing about the draft. EJ, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Sure, I'll knock mine out here. We'll go. I'm going bottom to the top on mine. I don't know how you want to do yours, but
All right.
I'll just knock it out that way.
Oh yeah,
pull up my thing.
Yeah.
All right. So when it comes to the defensive guys, I don't know a whole lot. So we're going to just kind of touch more on the people that are going to be best ball relevant.
Yeah.
More or less, we want to see how close we can get and see. It's a fun thing for us. So I got Gibbs going to the Bengals. We've talked about Mixon isn't going to be there. So I really think they're going to take somebody that is more of the elite. And I think they're going to have to go early because I don't think he would come back around to their next pick. They've shown that they're not afraid to draft, offensive players when they have glaring weaknesses elsewhere. Quentin Johnson to the Vikings. I think that's just solely for the fact that they're going to need receivers. I don't think KJ Osborne is it. Like I said earlier, I would have a logic KJ Osborne, but we'll see. That I think they're drafting the receiver in the first round, and that would alter my view on KJ Johnson or KJ Osborne. But we'll see. If they don't go receiver, I'm in on KJ Osborne. All right, let's. Oh, now it's not letting me pull up. There we go. I was about to get nervous for a second. Jordan Addison to the Chargers. They're going to need a third guy. Both the wide receiver history, injury of the primary guys is there. So I think that he could be a very, very good best ball pick if he ends up there. That's what I'm hoping for almost. Doesn't really matter which wide receiver lands there. That's somebody I'm going to be higher on if the Chargers take a wide receiver in the first round. What's going on that? We got JSN to Green Bay. I really feel like they're just going to kind of shove it in Rodgers' face and try to draft the best available wide receiver if they're there. I took a different take on what the Texans are going to do. I think if Richardson holds off to the 12th spot, if nobody trades off, I think they'll take him there. So, it makes sense in my mind. And I don't see it being out of the world of possibility for him to slide down that far. We'll get up to the top here. Got Bijan to the Eagles as a hope. Really, really hope it happens. I really, really wish the Falcons bolster their offensive line at 8, but this is more of a wish than a realistic take. I think what they got there is Bijan goes at 8, and if we're looking similar here, the Eagles go Christian Gonzalez. But I'm also hoping Jalen Carter slides down.
Yeah.
Like I said, we discussed that earlier. That's what I think. I think CJ Stroud goes at 4. Just makes sense to me that he's kind of falling in everybody's eyes. But, he had hype of going 1 overall for a reason. So I think kind of fits Colts build. I think he's a little more NFL ready than Richardson. So I think that he'll take over halfway through the season. I guess I didn't discuss that. I got Tennessee trading up with the Cardinals. Talked about that a whole bunch yesterday. I think Levis kind of got the steam at the end of the season too. Just rolling with that. And then Bryce Young, 101.
Nice. I like it. I see a lot of things in there that I came pretty close to putting in mine. So I seems like the main rumor that I've been hearing a lot of is that Bijan won't go outside the top 12. So
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, there's an outside chance that the Texans even take him at 12 if they really just want to avoid going quarterback. And I
yeah,
don't think that's unplausible. I really don't think he gets past the Falcons. I think he goes to the Falcons at 8. As much as I
man,
wish he wouldn't.
that's definitely where the steam is, and I'm just like, why on earth, from the Falcons' perspective, is that the pick? They have so
Yeah.
many other holes there.
And Algier has shown that he can be good. Given he's a rookie last year, I almost feel like you got to give the guy a second chance when he has shown that there is the possibility of production.
Yeah. All right, I'll throw my mock up here. I have mine kind of split in half, so I'll start with the back half like you did. I went Jalen Hyatt to the Chiefs. Hyatt's been a guy who's been falling quite a bit. It sounds like he's pretty deep into the second round at this point, but I threw him here on the Chiefs. I think they want to go wide receiver, and just based on the way my other picks fell, he was the best available. And with MVS not really showing up last year, I think they could bring Hyatt in to fill that role.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert for what is earlier in my draft, I do not have Bijan to the Eagles. So
Ooh.
I have Gibbs here. I don't know. Have you heard much about the Eagles and Gibbs, if that's plausible?
Yeah, I've seen people mock it across the board quite a bit. I see most of it. I've seen that, and then I've seen Branch falling, and then Gibbs getting taken by one of the two, Bills or the Bengals. So
Yeah.
I think it kind of just depends on how that goes through. It'll surprise me if Gibbs ends up as a first round talent as a whole. And I feel like it's more like the fantasy player in me that's talking that it's
That's
going to
kind of how
happen.
I feel too, but there's been stuff in recent days saying like, oh, all the NFL views him as a round one guy. Like, that's great. They may view him as one, but Jonathan Taylor and Breece Hall were round two picks as
Mm-hmm.
well, even though they were extremely talented prospects. So,
Right.
yeah, the Bengals, I did go cornerback. Obviously, they've been linked to Gibbs, but I've also seen them linked to Zach Charbonnet at pick 60. So that's why I held off on running back there. As I mentioned earlier in the show, I think Dallas is probably taking a tight end, and Dalton Kincaid makes a lot of sense there. I went Quentin Johnston to the Giants just because he's really the only like big wide receiver in the top 6 in this draft. And as we talked about, they have so many slot guys there that I just don't see them adding another small wide receiver. I put Addison to the Vikings. I think Chargers are a good landing spot for Addison. I think the Vikings are as well. That would be really, really fun having Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison on the same
Side by
team.
side. Yeah, I agree with that.
You can see here I did go with a Ravens Cardinals trade. So sending D-Hop to Baltimore in this scenario. I had seen some steam of Zay Flowers as the second wide receiver off the board. I think he's the betting favorite right now. So I'm not a huge Zay Flowers fan, but that's why I put him here to the Chargers. He's kind of a smaller guy. He's not tiny by any means, but he plays primarily outside, which is an interesting fit for the NFL. So beyond that, I had JSN fall in this draft. I almost put him with the Packers like you did. Almost put him on the Patriots, but he ends up falling here, and with Jameson suspended, the Lions scoop him up.
Okay. It's hard to argue that.
With my Steelers, they've been linked to Joey Porter quite a bit, but I've seen some rumors that Porter's going to fall more than people expect. So wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers end up going a different route. I've seen them linked to Brian Branch, but that feels kind of early for him. And then for the top of this, I went Michael Mayer to the Packers. I think he just, with the question mark of Jordan Love, he provides a safety net there. I did go Bijan to the Texans. Went back and forth basically on Richardson or Bijan to the Titans, but I think just with where they're at from a team build, they need a quarterback, and they had a potentially elite one fall to them. The splashy trade I threw in here was the Eagles trading up for Will Anderson.
That'd be okay.
Yeah, I think the Eagles are going to want a guy like Anderson or Jalen Carter, and I don't see Jalen Carter falling past pick 5. So they go up to get one of those guys. If the Cardinals do stay at pick 3, I've seen them linked to Paris Johnson quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, otherwise I went Levis at 4 to the Colts, and then I had the Falcons take Stroud. I don't know, that Vegas odds aren't really there for that one, but I just think they'd be dumb to pass on a quarterback given where they're at.
Yeah, especially with somebody that we know is talented and can perform versus what you already have.
Yeah. I think this year the top 12 picks are really interesting. There's just so many inflection points where, like, if you plug a different guy in at 3, it completely changes the outlook for the rest of this, and so on.
And the thing is, too, there's like a lot of teams that are pretty decent in the top 12. I mean, Titans can still be, like they still could be a better team in the division. I'm not saying they're going to be like Super Bowl contenders, but I think they could. If anybody's going to give Jacksonville a run, I think it's going to be Tennessee. You got the Eagles in there. You got the Seahawks in there. You got the Lions in there. And even the Raiders could be fine. Like there's a lot of good teams that ended up in the top 12 this year.
And you've got a lot of good teams with firepower to move up or down too, like Lions, Seahawks, Eagles all have 2 firsts.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be fun watching this play out.
I'm excited for tomorrow. I'm probably not going to be, but I am excited for it.
I think the Eagles know they're in their window right now. So I don't think they're going to be scared to make a move to go get one of these ultra talented guys.
No. So fingers crossed. So here's to a happy draft.
Yes. At least with the Steelers, like as long as they take defense or offensive line, like I'll be all right. They can't really let me down too much. Well, if Richardson is there, maybe. He won't be there.
Yeah, he won't be there. I don't see Richardson making it out of the top 12. I know some people have like a couple of the quarterbacks like going to Tampa at 19, and that just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it feels like somebody always falls. Like we always convince ourselves they're going to go top 10, and then somebody falls. But I almost feel like it could be Levis over Richardson that falls.
It should be.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Been wrong in the past.
Yep. All right, man. Any closing thoughts before we land this plane?
No, I'm just looking forward to the draft tomorrow. We'll be talking through it, I'm sure, and hopefully you don't see me cry.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll probably do something short with draft reactions, and we'll have the ability to do draft streams by this weekend. So we'll have some good content flowing.
Fingers crossed that things actually turn out good for once.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been another episode of The Climb. We will catch you either this weekend or early next week.
Yeah. See you later.